company would incur to reproduce a similar intangible or say a software within the company. And a replacement cost would be what would be the cost that the company would incur to replace the existing intangible with another one which is similar to it and is available in the market. Okay, this is the case study that I would like to discuss, and I was mentioning in the beginning. There's a popular brand which was legally registered by the parent company about a decade ago. Now, the legal owner is the parent company. However, that was licensed to its subsidiary about a decade ago for economic exploitation. Now, over the past years, that brand has reached a significant value. The question comes, who is the owner of that brand? Is it the legal owner or the economic owner? The complications in this case are, the royalty rate arrangement that was drafted, it was very loose. There was a small lump sum amount that was agreed to be paid by the subsidiary company to the parent company for the use and exploitation of that brand. Now, in such kind of a scenario, the entire cost of marketing and development of that brand was spent by the subsidiary company. There was only initial costs that were incurred by the parent company in exploiting that brand. Another challenging situation to complicate the issue, both the companies are listed. The parent company is listed and the subsidiary company is listed. So you just don't have a conflict between the management of the two companies. You also have a dispute situation or a conflict situation vis-a-vis the minority shareholders of the two companies, because both the minority shareholders of the companies would not allow a loss because they claim that it is their brand. Second, from corporate governance perspective as well, the board of directors, the independent board at both the companies of the listed companies would not allow an easy transfer of the brand from the parent or the subsidiary or vice versa. So what is really the question? Who owns this brand? Whether the legal owner or the economic owner? Well, there's no right answer to this, and we discussed this internally and with consultants and our friends across the globe, and we got very differing views on this topic. Somebody said that although the legal ownership of this brand lies with the parent company, the entire expenditure or the costs were incurred by the subsidiary company in developing that brand and taking it to a level where it is today. And therefore, the entire value should be attributed to the subsidiary company. However, if you present this argument in front of the transfer pricing authorities, and I'm sure Julia would support me in that, tax authorities would not accept this kind of an argument, because ultimately the paper says that the legal owner of the brand is the parent company. Some of the other views that we got were that no matter how economically it was exploited by the subsidiary company, it is the parent company which is the legal owner of the brand. Therefore, it doesn't matter how the subsidiary company developed it. Ultimately, the entire value of that brand today should be attributed to the parent company. Again, it makes sense based on what the agreement says, but economically it does not. It's illogical. There were some of them and some views that we also to a large extent concur to. There were some views that said that step one, let's identify what is the fair value of the brand today. Step two, let's find out what is the total cost contribution by the two companies towards development of this brand till date. Let's index those costs and capitalize them till date, and the ratio of the cost contribution of the two companies towards the brand would determine the fair allocation of the value of the brand between the two companies. Again, there's no literature that supports this argument, but that is one of the views that we got, and we were quite comfortable to at least consider that. I would be happy to have some more views on this from the panel or from the audience on this case study. The second case study is where one of the pharmaceutical companies approached us to transfer the global IPR related to a molecule which was at an R&D stage to be transferred to an overseas entity so that they can exploit those rights and develop the product. Now here we were talking about the regulated markets. So this is just a very brief case study that how we carried out the valuation for those intellectual property rights related to the molecule which was at the R&D stage, just to give you a flair that what are the nuances that we included in this kind of evaluation. This matter even went to the tax authorities, and we were questioned on some of the assumptions and ways that this was carried out, and finally we were able to present to them and convince them that this was the right way to value that IPR. So I would briefly divide the entire valuation for this kind of a molecule or IPR into 3 steps. First step, and the cutoff for those 3 steps would be the valuation date. What is the effective date of valuation that we're talking about, or the date of dispute, or the date of litigation? Prior to that date of valuation, what we need to discuss is information on the, sorry, can I have a mic because that will be more convenient. Hello? Okay. So prior to the date of valuation, what we did was all the information about the IPR or molecule that's available till date. Sometimes what happens, and especially in the developing nations and the unregulated markets, the products, they are easier to clear the regulatory process, and hence the products are launched or they're commercially produced in the market. Now, it is very important that before we carry out valuation of these kind of IPR in a regulated market scenario, to understand what are the costs that are already incurred in the developing nation, and also to understand that to what extent this product was successful. So step 1, before the date of valuation, we find out all the details about the IPR molecule, all the therapeutic areas to which that particular molecule is supposed to cater to. Then we find out about all the patents and all the countries and geographical regions where this has been applied for. Then we have the valuation date, where we try to establish for each geographical region what is the target market and what is the market share that the company is planning to attain through the exploitation of that molecule. This is my next stage, which is step 2, which is financial projections during the life of the patent, where you have phase 1, the R&D, the preclinical, clinical, and finally the regulatory approvals. Now, since I said earlier, we are at the date of valuation, which is the beginning point over here. For the molecule and the product to be commercially launched at the end of the phase, you need to have a probability of success applied at each of these 4 phases. And all the sales and profits that come at the end of these 4 phases would have a cumulative probability factor applied to them. Without this, this valuation would not make sense. And that is what we have shown here, the probability of success for each of these 4 phases, the cost of development and the timeline, because at the end of the day, valuation is a time value of money factor. And finally, you have the exploitation and commercial launch of the product, where you have the profits, revenues, and the net profit that you would attribute to that product. The final stage, when the patent expires. We cannot have a valuation without a terminal value. So in this kind of scenario, if my patent has a life of 20 years, what happens after 20 years? Of course, there'll be competitors that will enter into the market. There will be a price erosion. There will be a decline in the market share. And accordingly, there will be a terminal growth rate to the molecule or the product that I'm talking about. And that is how a terminal value or financial projections in perpetuity are discussed for this molecule. The fair value of these global IPR or rights associated with this molecule is then simply the sum of the value during the financial projections and the terminal value. At this thought, I would like to end this presentation. Thank you so much.